working. Weird. Is working. Weird. Is working. Help. Everything's different in YouTube again. Where's the chat? Where is everything? I don't see any of the stuff that I had a couple months ago. Yikes. Okay, it seems that the live stream is already running, but I can't see the chat, so I can't see what you're doing, which is kind of sad. Oh man. I don't get why they change everything and then everything is like completely different. Like not an iteration of it, but just completely different. Oh, come on. I can switch back to the old view as it seems. So I might take a few more minutes to get this up and running. I'm really lost at the moment. I hope you can hear me at all. Live streaming. Phew. Oh yeah, there's the chat. You hear me, okay. Oh yeah, like 4 months later and everything's different. So new computer, I had my issues with that. Everything new on YouTube, and I didn't take enough time to prepare that. Yeah, I have to start with a little rant just because I feel like it. I have to rant about Apple because I can't understand it. I have a new MacBook Air. It's totally fine. The old one was super slow in the end, as you all know if you watched the previous live streams. It has been, yeah, it really got in my way, and so I replaced it after I think 4 years or something. And I like the new machine. It's a good next step. The keyboard is absolutely terrible, worst ever. I can't believe how terrible it is in comparison to the old one. I really miss the old one. I hardly ever type on the new one. I try to keep it connected to my screen as long as possible with an external keyboard. It's such a disaster. But today, what I had today is I have a Rode USB mic that I normally use to record those screencasts or anything else that I record. And I never used it with the new machine. So today I sat here and the first thing when I want to plug it in like 10 minutes before the live stream started was like, holy shit, I don't have enough USB ports to plug it in because one USB port is taken by the charger. So that is taken by electricity basically, and I think I need that because live streams normally take a lot of energy, and I guess it would drain the battery pretty quickly if I unplug that. And the second one is the screen, and I need the screen because otherwise I don't have enough screen estate on the small laptop to do all the live cast stuff. So yeah, no place for the microphone. Awesome. Why don't they just put 3 or 4 of those USB ports in there? But I don't really get it. I really don't get it. So I need to get a port or a hub as a next step. I'm so frustrated right now. And the second thing is then I unplugged my charger and I plugged in the microphone and it doesn't work. So it doesn't seem to be happy with USB-C. Oh man. So a rough start. However, it's 4:01. My little rant is over. Let's get started with more positivity and more exciting news. I'm quite happy to be back, to be honest. You said some of you said in Slack that you missed the live streams, and I really missed them too. But to be honest, the last 4 months have been quite turbulent in a very positive way. Lots of work, and it felt that I need the focus and need a little break from the live streams. And it also wasn't kind of clear how to move on from the next Kirby Next project and that Slack situation that we had before, the very experimental live streams, what would come next. And so, yeah, the little break was kind of needed, but I feel like it's time to come back and, yeah, create more of those live streams. Probably not as often as before, so not every week, but maybe every second week or something like that. I still have to figure out how this will work in connection with the YouTube videos. So I really want to do a little series of YouTube videos, just like 5 minutes of tutorials, as I said in Slack. And so there should be a good mixture of stuff that is going to be public for everybody to see, and then stuff that is going to be more exclusive for the next supporters, maybe new people coming in the future, and they will get to see the live streams, and I will be a bit more personal in there, as is already also the case on Slack. I want to start with a little recap of the last 4 months because, as I said, they have been pretty turbulent. You have been following some of it already on Twitter, on Slack, the launch. I mean, it has been really amazing. The last time I spoke on a live stream was shortly before the launch, and there was still so much excitement around it and so much, well, nervousness how the launch would go. And yeah, it went really well, I think. I was very anxious about it. After like 2 years building stuff, you kind of lose the objectivity. Well, you never have really some kind of objectivity around your project, but after 2 years, it feels like you're completely lost. You're so focused on every little detail that you can't really take that step back anymore and say, okay, let's behold the project from a wider angle, and you're just so far deep into it that it's really hard to tell if it's going to be well accepted or not. I mean, you helped, of course. The Slack channel really helped because you gave so much positive feedback and so much input in general. But still, it was kind of a frightening step, and yeah, it would work really well. We got a lot of positive feedback. We went number one on Product Hunt for one day, which was very special. A lot of traffic came from that. So many good comments. A lot of your comments were amazing there, really, really helpful. But we ended up with 850 votes, I think, which is just mind blowing. I mean, I would never have expected that, and I was very, very happy about it. The sales were amazing, so we started with a huge spike that gave us a very nice cushion, financial cushion for the next month, and we still profit from that. It was very positive to sell it for the first time. It's a bit like launching the product for the first time, so yeah, just making money with it again felt almost the same way as it felt when I launched Kirby 1, so it was very special. We managed to increase our sales pretty dramatically in comparison to Kirby 2, which was very positive for us because from now on, the last 4 months, I was able to pay the other folks in the team regularly, which was kind of my main goal, because with the team together, I knew that we could create so much more in the coming months and also in the future. So that was very special to me. Yeah, kind of my own financial situation got stabilized by the launch. So very, very positive things after January, and I'm very grateful for that. And you own a lot of yeah, that gratefulness, in my opinion, because you really helped us to get there. But I mean, coming from like this is the third major release, so I already knew what would be coming. I knew that there would be a lot of work once we launched, and of course, the same things happened. I was quite astonished that there wasn't that many tragic issues as we feared. So especially with the upgrade, I was kind of nervous that a lot of people would run into difficult situations. I mean, of course, there were some of those, but in general, it went pretty smoothly. I think much more smoothly than I expected, to be honest. And also in terms of dramatic bugs, at least what we got as the feedback. I mean, it's always difficult. There's probably a different perception from people who had those issues than what we expected. But in the end, if you launch something like dramatically new as Kirby 3 has been, it's kind of, I really expected that there are going to be worse issues than what we had. And I think what also helped, and that's kind of the feedback that we also got from you and from other people, is that we kept with that regular release schedule afterwards. So that release schedule that we had during the next phase helped so much to just keep on going. I mean, it felt like just moving on, never stop. And so with every minor release, I spoke often about this on Slack, we could fix a few issues. We could tell people, okay, we are able to fix stuff very quickly in a short circle, in a short iteration circle, and that was very positive as well for us, because then the pressure is not as high as we would normally have it when releases only came out every 3 or 4 months or whatever. And we had quite a lot of releases already. So let me check. I've written down a few stats around those last months. So what we had is like 15 releases, including the minor or the release candidates, which is quite a lot. And of course, 3.1 has been there with a lot of new features that you all saw. And I just spoke to Nico the other day, yesterday, yeah, and we spoke a bit about how working on Kirby 3 has changed from Kirby 2, and how much we feel confident with this version now, and with every step that we take, it feels more, we feel we can achieve more in a shorter amount of time and with less with less issues, or with more confidence in general. I mean, our test coverage helped there, and many other factors helped there. Vue.js helped a lot. With everything that we built, it feels like we are just getting started. So this new version is just the foundation for what can be done in the next month. And of course, this live stream is also about that somehow. A lot of work in the last month has also gone into the website. So we had 545 commits, I just counted today, which is incredible. Like, so many tiny little changes, of course, like small typos, but then also like massive changes. Sonia has been super active with the cookbook, with articles about pretty much any aspect of Kirby 3. And then Nico and Sonia spent so much time on the reference, like fixing stuff, getting stuff up to date, improving little things, reacting on feedback. We got quite a lot of pull requests for the website, which I'm very happy about. All kinds of things, typos again, but also like missing docs and all kinds of stuff. Really exciting. And it feels like we are making a lot of progress. It's still not there at some parts, so the reference is still tricky. It feels like this huge monster that we created, where still parts are not ideal, but we're getting there. I mean, that's basically the biggest lesson that we had so far, is when we keep moving like we moved during the last 2 years, and when we could keep moving like we did in the last 4 months, we can achieve quite a lot, and I think it shows. We started the plugin repo, which you saw, which is a huge step for Kirby in general, coming from this GitHub issue list that was very complete, but at the same time also very technical, and maybe not as supportive to the variety of plugins that we had. So with including them on the website and showing them in a bit more user-friendly way, I think for the first time you can really see what kind of awesome plugins we have, and I hope that all the plugin developers feel a bit more supported by that as well. We have a lot of plans around that. So the plugin repo is going to be growing in terms of functionalities and in terms of how we present plugins in the next months and weeks. It's just the foundation, but as always, I think the foundation is a huge step from what we had so far. Yeah, in general, what I said before, I'm super excited about having the other folks around all the time, like not just saying, okay, I can't hire you this month, but I can't hire you the next month, which has always like been a miserable situation, especially in times when there was a lot of work, but there wasn't enough money to to get the work or the additional support from the team. And now we just have this regular ongoing payments and ongoing tasks, and we plan a lot more together, and it's so much fun. It feels amazing. I mean, the biggest change from the Kirby 2 from the Kirby Next phase to now is that during the Kirby Next phase, everything was focused on that version. So there wasn't anything being done for the public. Everything was being done behind the scenes, as you all know. And so much work was going into this version that we couldn't really tell how it would be to focus so much effort on a live situation. So what we have right now is something that we never had before. I never was able to spend every hour a day in my work day on a live version. Before, I always had client projects, and then the development phase for V3 came, and from now it's really a completely different situation. It's amazing. Okay, now I talk quite a lot. Let me check. It's all about, this live stream is all about 3.2, which is coming up at the end of May. So that's the current plan, that we have a release candidate, I think, at the 28th. And then the beginning of June would be the release date for 3.2. It depends a bit on how fast we are until then with all the plans that we have. Most of you have probably already seen the roadmap for it. The roadmap is pretty much in flux. So it's not something that we set out to do exactly as it is here, but it's a lot of moving around from the tasks or from the ideas that we get from the ideas repository, and also the things that we want to achieve. It's sometimes a bit difficult to explain, because we make these plans, we say, it would be really good to have this in there, and then you start working on it and you suddenly realize, that particular issue is super complicated to build, and we might not get that done until that time, or it might be something that we have to care a bit more about, or write a bigger concept for it, because it's it just takes that kind of planning in order to get it right. But I feel like the stuff that we have on the to-do list right now, we could more or less get that done. And then a few other things probably. But what I want to do in this live stream is to go through the things that we already have completed, and just discuss around the implications of those new features. There's quite a lot of things already working and implemented. A couple of those things need to be a bit more polished. Not everything is fully done or fully secure or whatever. It's an ongoing process, but you can see it here. Most of the stuff I already showed in Slack, so I don't really want to bore you, but I think I can show quite a lot of things around all those different features. One of the first things that I personally built was the duplicating feature. That is one of those wishes that has been around for, I don't know, I guess years probably. I mean, we had that wish coming up for Kirby 2 all the time. Let us duplicate pages. Biggest second wish would be let us move pages around, which I don't know if you can include that as well. I don't want to promise too much, but duplicating pages is finally here. I mean, this is the thing that I said before when I discussed with Nico how different it feels. Suddenly such features don't feel impossible anymore. Before it was like this jQuery monster that we have created for V2, and whenever you touched something you were like, oh my god, I hope it doesn't break anything else. And now with Vue.js and with the backend that we have in place, everything feels just basically rock solid, and we are just extremely excited about anything that we can add on top of that, and it's so much fun, and often it's just astounding how little time it takes to build something like that. Let me show that to you live. So what you can do now, you have a new option, is a duplicate option here. It is here, and of course, because that's the same thing, it's also here. So you can do it in any page lists, no matter if it's cards or if it's a normal list. Wherever a page appears and it has options, you can find the duplicate option, and when you click that, you get a duplicate window, and here you can say, okay, what should be the title? By now it appends a copy. Not really elegant, but I think it needs something like this, because otherwise it would create a duplicate which cannot be created, because then the URL appendix is a duplicate as well, and the page exists basically. So let's rename that. More oceans. And you can also see a new feature which I built today. So now you can say, do you want to copy the files of that page as well? Sometimes that might be really a good idea. Sometimes it might not be a good idea. In this case, let's just try it with the feature, and then it jumps directly to the page. You have all the files copied, all the content is there. You can basically just go on and edit this now and finish it. You also saw here that I copied the ocean album in this case, which was public, and the copy is automatically converted to a draft. It wouldn't be useful, in my opinion, to have that published directly. I mean, that is another wish that might be coming up someday, that you can control the status of a page when you create it or when you duplicate it. But for now, I think this is the more safe way to go forward. So that would be version 1. And if you decide to duplicate the page, but you don't really want to copy the files, you can do that as well. And then it's empty, but you still have all the content. So quite handy. I think this is really, really useful. So that would be feature 1 coming up, already implemented. Second feature also implemented is the monospace option for text areas. Completely inspired by what Sylvain and Fabian built for the Markdown editor. It does what it says, so you can switch on a monospace font instead of the normal font for the text area. Super useful if you have something that is a bit more techy, or if you prefer to have monospace in that text area, because then you can see like the or you get better alignments in text and numbers or whatever. So this is an option for you. Super easy to implement, but quite useful in general in the end. This one has been asked for quite a lot as well. So flexible width for structure columns. What it does is, so far what we had is the same width that were available for the form grid were also available for columns in structures. While the form grid isn't as flexible as structures, and we have to keep a certain set of width for the form grid because of responsiveness, etc. It really makes a lot of sense to have more choices for structure tables, because the table can be quite, or the columns can be quite different, and so it makes sense to have more control here. What I did here to implement this is the same thing that I did for cards, for card ratios. If you remember there, you can also select the ratio, whatever ratio you want, and the ratio is automatically calculated then, and the same thing happens here for the table. So what you can do is basically put in any fraction as the width, and then the structure component will automatically calculate the width according to that fraction. The fractions should add up. If they don't, it's not a big deal, because tables will take care of it. Nothing breaks really, but it makes more sense if you combine those fractions correctly. Custom login screen, something that I did yesterday, I think. Also something that has been requested quite a lot, especially since there was this amazing plugin by Pedro for V2, which implemented a different authentication type to log in with two-factor authentication as far as I remember. And the only thing that really blocked this feature was that the custom or the login view wasn't replaceable in our new setup. And now it is. I don't have the code down here. I posted it in on Slack, and I can add it in the next days here as well. Those login screen plugins look really simple because you only focus on the form or whatever is here. So you could basically create your own form, own login form. You could just put in a couple of buttons that connect to Twitter and start an OAuth flow there, or whatever you plan. I mean, QR code scanning craziness, or something like the Out0, or however you pronounce that service, or even Outlook, something like that can be done. And so what you would need to do is to create your own form for that, quite simple to do. And then on the back end, you would create your own API route, authentication route. You could call that with the API handler in the plugin, and then you can do whatever you want in that API route. So authentication is now totally open. We always had a login passwordless feed function or method for users, so you can use that afterwards to create a session. So, and from there on, it's all fine. This has been something we also posted in Slack, but I think it's also such an important addition. Translatable slugs, a feature that we had problems with in Kirby 2 all the time because it has been very German back then. So it's funny because the slugs or the slug replacements that we used in Kirby 2 were basically most special characters, they were kind of German. So if you had an umlaut, it would be converted to AE, which is fine for Germans, but not so fine for other languages. And so we always got that feedback for Kirby 2. It's too German, can we adjust that somehow? And it wasn't possible in Kirby 2. And then we made it more globally applicable by replacing a umlaut, for example, with just an A. So a bit less specific. And then we got the feedback from the Germans saying, it's no longer correct. What did you do? Well, it seems to be broken. So yeah, it was difficult. But the good thing that we came up with now, or Nico came up with, is what we have on board now is a set of rules from the Slug.js library that has rules for basically any language. Let me pull that up. Where is it? Kirby 3, Sandbox. Oh no, it's the old version. Shit. Yeah, I can't show it to you, but I can talk about it. It's no problem. So for every language, or for most languages, there is a set of predefined rules which takes care of translating the slugs correctly. And then additionally, if you are not happy with some of those rules in those languages, or for those languages, you can define your own slug rules in the language files, and especially for multi-language setups, of course, which is pretty cool because now you have full control and you can do crazy things like this, and it's all a lot more international and correct in the end. Thanks to Nico, who took care of all this. And the best part that I like the most is that he took not just that library and plugged it into it, but he took the rule set and then he created our own library around it, which is now universal because it works in PHP and it also works in JS at the same time. So we use the same rule set for both languages, for the backend and the front end, which is pretty brilliant in my opinion. Another feature wish that I think is pretty useful. One of those low-hanging fruits, as we call them, are snippet alternatives. Just a tiny change that can be quite effective when you work with templates or with snippets in templates. And it might not be obvious why that could be cool, but what you can do now is to, instead of just calling a snippet like this, you can define an array of snippets that could be used, like snippet names. You can say, okay, take the first one. If this does not exist, take the second one. If this does not exist, take the third one. With 3 snippets, I couldn't find any use case. There's probably one. This was just to demonstrate the general idea behind it, but there's quite a good use case for dynamic post types, especially in connection with conditional fields, where you say, I have a template with conditional fields for different types of articles. I have a video type, I have a link type, I have a text type, I have a whatever type, pretty much like what you had in Tumblr in the early days. And then you could have that post type field and say, okay, load a snippet, which just then creates the body for the article, for example, by the post type, by whatever is in that post type field. And if there is a post type that is not known or there's no snippet for it, then fall back to the article's default snippet. So very, very simple way of switching between snippets and falling back to something that could then still render that particular type of page. I think it's really handy. Another major thing that Nico came up with is our improved query syntax. He spoke about that in Slack. Again, I think a major improvement that might not seem like it on the first sight, but if you think about the implications, what it does in the end, or what it can do in the end, it's pretty big. So first, you can work with arrays now in our query syntax. So stuff like this is possible. Awesome stuff. Lots of good ideas around that. And then nested queries, of course. And they are limited. It's not like you nest them forever and everything's fine, but you can do things like this. So you can combine 2 collections and say, okay, take that collection, but not that collection. So you can filter pretty easily by using collections together. Very handy stuff. There is more than that you can do. And I think a lot of this will show while you use it, why it's useful. I mean, this has been based on a lot of feedback as well, where people said, oh, I really want to do this, but the syntax is not powerful enough. And we always said the syntax is not intended as a language within YAML. That would be enough, it would be too much. But what we want it to be is a very comfortable way of doing all kinds of things that would normally not be possible in YAML, but without too much logic. Multi-language routing or routing, or however you pronounce it, also a new feature. I talked about it in Slack. It has turned out a bit more different than what I showed in Slack, and I think it's better now. And I just want to talk about it. So again, something that we had as a wish for ages. I mean, in Kirby 2, I can't remember how often we got asked for, like, how can we make multi-language routing easier? And I said in Slack, it was this typical situation where I was aware that there was a problem around that, or that it was complicated, but it worked. So it didn't seem like a pressing issue until Sonia came around and wrote a routing recipe for the cookbook for just the other day. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, I wasn't aware that it's that complicated. So I always thought, yeah, it's not as comfortable as it could be, but it's fine. And I never really used it myself, which sometimes is a very limited view, of course. But I just didn't see the urgency behind it until I saw what Sonia wrote about it. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, it's so complicated. We can't leave it like that. So Sonia is now blackmailing me and saying whenever she needs a new feature, she will just write a super complicated cookbook article, and then I will come up with a better feature around it, which is of course not the way how we plan to go on with new features, but yeah, it really worked this time. And I'm happy with the way that roots are going to be better in this case, because what you can do now is you can define what kind of language a root applies to. So you can say, okay, this should be a scoped root which takes languages, which considers the language. So it will, when you do this, the root will automatically match en something or de something. So you no longer have to care about the prefix, the language prefix. The prefix is automatically done by you, by the router, of course. But you can also say, okay, I want this root to be specific for only one language. So you can say this only applies to the language en, and then the language, it will take this, but it won't take this. Which is quite handy as well. So that's the difference from what I showed you in Slack. You can now say, you can now use the wildcard, or you can use a specific language key to create multiple roots for different languages, which I think is a better way than what I proposed in Slack. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you add that language scope, the language object will automatically be injected as the first argument of the root. So you get the language object, and as a second root, you get your slug that is coming from that placeholder here in the URL. And with that, you have full control over what you do inside here. And it doesn't really matter what the language code looks like. You don't have to write specific roots around that anymore. And then the same thing down here can be done with pages, because that was the second major pain point for routing in multi-language installations. The first one has been the language code. Oh, and I forgot one important part, because the best part around this is if you have a language installation that has been something like this, something for the default language and then a second language, that hasn't been that difficult before. You could work around that easily, but it got complicated when the default language didn't have a language prefix, and now that is handled as well. So you don't have to care about has the default language a prefix or not, doesn't matter at all. This will still work, and it will still give you the correct language object no matter what comes around here. That's the most important part. So that is major pain point 1 solved. And major pain point 2 has been the translated slugs. So for example, if you wanted to create a root for the notes for your blog, for example, let's keep it blog. No, we take notes because I can translate that. So let's say you wanted to do something like a specific tag root for your notes. But what you could do now, what you can also have is a translated slug for notes. So it would be notes in English, but it would be Notizen in German or anything else in any other language. You would suddenly have to hard code those slugs in here. So you would have to create something like this to make it work. And whenever the slugs change, you would have to update the root as well, which is pretty bad. And to solve that dilemma with translated slugs, what you can do now is you can tell the router in this case which kind of page should be considered when the root is running. So the router will automatically take the page that has been defined here and prefix that depending on the language. So this would mean if you have something like this, it would match. And if you have something like this, it would match. But it would also match if your default language has no prefix. And also if you suddenly change from Notizen to, I don't know, blog for the German version, it will also match here. So no problems with translated slugs in this case. So those major pain points are finally solved with language routing, and that is done already. Um, okay, a few more things before I stop here. But this is also quite useful. This has been a PR. I'm really sorry. I forgot who contributed. Ah, shit! I should have written it down. I'm really sorry for the one who contributed. I have to look it up again. But it's coming from the community, which is of course extra awesome. Now I feel a bit ashamed that I don't know the name anymore. But however, the cool thing is you can now unset things that from blueprint extensions. So if you create a blueprint extension for a tab, for example, and you use that tab, you can now unset a field, for example, or you can unset other features that you have in your extension, which has not been possible before. So before you would need to use the entire field set of the extension, and that is of course pretty limiting. With this now you can unset that by passing false, and then the SEO description field in this case would just be gone. We have a new TT helper, which completes the T helper for translations and the TC helper for counted translations. And this is the TT helper for template translations. So what it can do is you can create your own templates in the language file. You can use those placeholders here with the curly braces, and then you can translate that and pass in some data to that translation. So whatever you want can be replaced in that message, which can be quite handy a lot of times. So we created the translation helper to make that more comfortable in templates. We have additional enhancement and fixes. That is a very specific one for plugins, which makes it easier to upload files via the panel. With blobs, you can do that now. So all kinds of features that can be built around blobs in JS can now upload or use our upload helper to upload stuff, even if it's not a real file. I think you can do this kind of stuff from creating things in Canvas or whatever, and then create a blob out of it and upload that. We have faster template generation logic, which is very important. It has been too slow, especially in cases where you had big images. We were able to increase the performance of that quite massively. We now include WebP in the list of page images. That is one step further to embrace WebP in general. Yeah, and a couple more things. So this is what we have right now. Let me talk 4 or 5 minutes about the to-dos that are still open. Some of the things we already talked about. You saw that Nico has already been started working on the lock feature. That is one of the major features that we plan for 3.2. Finally have some solid locking in place when someone edits a page and someone else from the team wants to edit the same page, so they can't really overwrite their changes and there are no conflicts there. It's tricky because we don't have WebSockets in place, so we have to do some kind of polling magic in the background. It's not super elegant, but it will be cool in the end, and it will be solid in the end, and it already works quite well, and I'm very excited about this. Another major feature that has been requested all the time are better permissions. I know that we took a step back from what we had in Kirby 2 with permissions to what we have in Kirby 3. I spoke a lot of times in the previous live streams around that or about that. The main decision around this was that permissions in Kirby 2 were way too complex. For simple things, you always had to write PHP logic to solve all kinds of simple permission issues. And there were so many edge cases, it never felt stable from our side. So we tried to take a step back, move that into YAML, make it a lot more user-friendly as a first step. But we also sacrificed a lot of the flexibility that came with the previous features. And now it's all about bringing that back, but in a way that combines well with what we have in YAML. I think it's like you have to think a bit about it a bit like a layer cake, where the YAML stuff is like the easy entrance drug to permissions, and then from there on there will be additional layers that will complete that and make it more powerful and comparable to what we had in V2. So that is, one of the main features now for Kirby 3.2. Source set support in the image tag. I thought that this is going to be a low-hanging fruit. It turns out to be not that easy for various reasons. I'm not going to go into detail here. This is pretty much done, and I think a lot of you will be as excited about it as we are. So you finally have user methods, users methods, and you have user models. And user models, I think they will really rock in the end. Did I just start suck and then convert to rock? I don't know what's up with my brain at that point. Forgive me. And then some important minor enhancements. Finally having uploads in files fields, having a search field in the pages field, just solid enhancements to our existing fields to get those like last 5 to 10% of missing or weird little situations solved in the new fields. This one is a to-do that I hope we can build. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't started on it yet. It could turn out to be super complicated, so that would be in addition to the conditions. We'll see. And conditions for sections seems to be doable as well. That's another one of those tasks where I have to get started first before I can say if it's actually doable or not. It's on the list. If it's not in 3.2, it will be in 3.3. I'm still confident. We still have a month. That's fine. Totally doable, I think. I wanted to have a few more words about the general roadmap. I don't know if you ever saw that. Let me make that bigger. I spent, I think 2 weeks ago, a full day on nothing else but just looking through your ideas. Something that I offloaded for later, so I didn't bother too much about the ideas repo for a long time, as long as we were working on the patches, to be quite honest. But then afterwards I started like scanning all the ideas and putting them into different columns so we can make sense of them a bit more, and like giving them a priority, find out the low-hanging fruits here, and then working on some of those already. So what you can see here, I mean, it's totally public, so you can go into there. If you are in the ideas repo and you see the projects tab up there, you can click on our roadmap project, and here are all the columns, so you can find your own issues. Not all issues are in there. There are a couple new ones that I haven't filed yet, but that's a rough sorting of what we plan to do. Basically, all of that which is in the high column will be in one of the next feature releases. So stuff like log pages, there are a lot of permission things in here. They basically combine to one thing in the end. So I think we can close quite a lot of tickets here after 3.2. There, as I said, permissions, lots of stuff around permissions. But then as well, here super interesting tickets in there. I mean, the input that you give us is so good. Seriously, I mean, the issues that we get for the Kirby repo, or the bug reports are just excellent. I couldn't be happier about them. I mean, the number of details you put into them, screenshots, how to reproduce that, amazing stuff. And the ideas are also really good. So yeah, that's roughly the way how we will move forward. We are still massively working on that WYSIWYG theme that you've seen in Slack as well. So kind of mixture of WYSIWYG, blog editor / page builder, native page builder. All this topic is super important. It's something that I'm constantly working on. It's just something that needs to be right in the end. I mean, you see the disasters that have been going on around Gutenberg. We don't want to recreate the same situation. We want to have something that works in the end, that is really good. Yeah, and it's a bit difficult for me because I'm taking a step back from. What I could do is to create just a wrapper plugin for any kind of WYSIWYG editor at the moment. That would work quite well. TipTap has been mentioned a couple times, but then in the end, this is not exactly what I want for the core. In the end, I want something that is better than that. And if I create such a plugin now, I have to maintain that. So I kind of hope that someone else comes up with such a wrapper in the meantime. Yeah, I just wanted to say this is an ongoing topic. We're keeping that in mind. I said before, the move feature is still something that is very important to us. So moving pages around in the structure. Um, Permissions, as I said many times, authentication is solved now. So we have a big topic done here. Another feature that I have in mind forever and ever and ever, and that will make it to one of the next releases, is page actions. So a plugin type for you where you can create your own actions for pages that would go into the page dropdown. Something like publish that on I don't know, static site generator thing, or create a tweet out of it, or there are so many things. Publish that or move that to Git, or I don't know. I mean, dozens of ideas around that. That would be also some of the features that are planned for later. I probably forgot a lot of things, but you can still see the roadmap. Whew. I wanted to spend like 30 minutes on this, and now it's 50 minutes again. But you stayed there. 20 people still hanging around, even though we have Easter vacations here in Germany, and I'm very happy about it. I enjoyed this live stream. I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope it was informative, even though you saw lots of those things already in Slack. Let me know what you want to see in the next one. There will be probably a lot more around what is already done when the next one is coming out. Maybe a few more things about what is coming up around Kirby in as a next step. So there will be the sketch meetup in Stuttgart in 2 weeks. Then there will be on Tellerrand. I will do a meetup there as well, like an impromptu small one during the conference. I will be talking at the university in Kassel at the end of May, giving a workshop to a class of students. By the way, if you have something similar in mind, a meetup, a workshop, and you want to get in contact with that, please do. I mean, I'm super happy about anything that we could organize together. That could be done to get the word about Kirby out some more. The Carbon ad will start on May 1st. I'm very excited about that. So we will have the first ad for Kirby 3 running around the world on dozens of amazing websites, including the Laravel site, including the Bootstrap site, many other big sites. Very excited about that. Let's see how that works. I have no idea how much effect that will have. There's a lot more coming up. A lot more that you will see on Twitter, on Instagram, in Slack. Try to be more active in Slack now as well. Then the videos are planned, and with this, I just leave it for now, and I hope you have a good Friday afternoon and a fantastic weekend. See you very soon. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Bye bye.